Hello everyone, welcome to the Loony Bin. My name is Loony, and I want to talk to you today about what we have witnessed in chapter 1115 of One Piece. Now, if you haven't read the chapter yet or are waiting for the Sunday release, they will go into what happened in this chapter. And it's a very monumental chapter, or at least it's going to be part of one of the more monumental ideas and theories that we will personally have about the world of One Piece, the world building in One Piece, specifically because it goes into, not necessarily in depth, because there's still a lot of stuff that we don't know, but it goes into what happened in the Void Century, what happened and what is going to essentially occur in the future of the story. So, what exactly is one of my most intriguing things that was mentioned in the chapter? It is the ideologies of the two parties involved in the conflict during the Great War 800 years ago during the Void Century. And according to Vegapunk, he doesn't know all the information. He doesn't even know essentially what the real purpose of the war was. He doesn't know like what each side was like legitimately going for, what they were fighting against each other, but there was two ideologies that were clashing with each other, and neither can be considered good or bad. And that made me think, what could these two ideologies be, right? What could the world government, the alliance of 20 kingdoms, believe in that would clash against what Joy Boy believed in, and what possibly the ancient civilization believed in with him. I will also discuss something that also caught my eye, is that Zunisha and the giant robot that we see in Egghead both are apologizing to Joy Boy in some form or way. Possibly has something to do with his ideology and what he was fighting for, and they unfortunately had to either not necessarily betray him, but go against what he wanted, because maybe both of them, both the robot and Zunisha, decided to go against what he believed in for some reason. And thus Zunisha was cursed, the robot was, incapacitated. So we're going to go a little bit into that as well. But I want to discuss first what possibly the two ideologies are that caused the conflict and what created the conflict. Now, for me personally, I believe the conflict of, that started the Great War, that, started the change in the world that the characters live in, alongside with the three weapons of, total destruction, the three ancient weapons caused and created this new world that the world government, reigns over. And I was thinking as I was reading the chapter and trying to figure out what exactly these two ideologies could be. I'm not saying for certain that these are going to be the ideologies, but this is what my brain is thinking. This is basically a theory. And I believe that the ideologies that, they were both going into conflict was freedom versus monarchy. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about freedom as in, freeing people from some sort of enslavement, some sort of, bad monarchy or anything like that. I think Joy Boy's ideology is more so that he didn't want any sort of monarchy from happening, to allow people the freedom to do whatever they want without law. And I think that's part of what Joy Boy wanted. He didn't want any law. He wanted the freedom to do whatever he wished, whatever anyone wished, without anyone telling him what not to do. Basically a lawless society. Maybe a few laws here and there, for like murder and stuff like that, right? Where you can't murder anything like that. But he didn't want something to embody a strict law to restrict his freedom, to restrict people's freedom. And I think in general, that's what he was fighting for. That's what the ancient civilization was also fighting for. It's possible that this ancient civilization, the royal family of this ancient civilization, were in agreement with him. And they wanted to remove their power, remove their hierarchy, right? to allow this freedom to essentially be, throughout the entire world. But then you have the 20 other kingdoms who didn't believe in the idea that it should be not necessarily a lawless area, but close to it, where you needed a monarchy, you needed something, a body to govern, to have laws, to essentially not totally restrict freedom from people, but have some sort of body of authority to determine whether or not, certain things can be allowed. And I think that's what the two ideologies were. And essentially, you can't really consider ideologies good or bad. There are bad situations from both ideologies, where if you have total freedom with no law, with no governing body, with no, hierarchy, no royalty or, any sort of law, you're going to have lawless areas such as people committing crimes all over the place and essentially not allowing people to do a lot of things that without any sort of rule or law is going to create chaos, right? And I think that's what Joy Boy not necessarily wanted. He didn't believe in that people will take that freedom and turn it into something that's lawless. I don't think that's what he meant or wanted with freedom, but that's what I'm assuming the other side believed will happen if there was no governing body law to, keep it in check. And that's why the alliance of the 20 kingdoms decided that we can't allow that. We will fight you for the idea that there should be law. There should be a body to govern or, to dictate what you can and can't do. Where Joy Boy didn't want that. He believed that freedom is essentially the most important thing in the world. So these two ideologies are clashing with each other, and you can see the bad in both, but you can also see the good in both, right? The problem is that unfortunately one side probably created this facade. What I mean by facade is that the ideology of the 28 kingdoms who fought against that freedom believed that they needed some sort of governing rule or some sort of power that keeps everything or everyone in check. But behind the scenes, the people who really wanted that power wanted it to do essentially what the Celestial Dragons are doing. Essentially have a governing body to dictate what they can and can't do, thus removing freedom to a point where they could do whatever they want without restrictions and whatever. Joy Boy probably at some point sensed that's what they were trying to do, and that's what he was trying to stop essentially. But on the outside, to the common people, to the people who just want to live their lives, probably didn't know this because there's always that facade. There's always that closed book that one side will always have. It will always prevent you from seeing what's deep inside what people are actually trying to do or doing, where on the outside they probably look like they're righteous people, right? Kind of like how we have the whole thing with the Gorosei Emu and them plotting really messed up stuff like what Emu did to literally that island and that kingdom, right? So I think Joy Boy understood that they were planning on that. More than likely, Lily told them this, right? She joined the alliance because she didn't want to have her kingdom be, in fear of her kingdom being destroyed by this group. Because more than likely, this group were able to obtain the weapons, the ancient weapons that destroyed, the world. And in secret, she continuously met with Joy Boy, probably with the royal family of the ancient kingdom, that sided with Joy Boy to come up with a plan, which is essentially what Lily did with spreading the poneglyphs so that the world can eventually know about the history about what's happening. But that's, I think, what the two ideologies are. It's freedom versus monarchy or law and justice. It's freedom versus law and justice. Both can be seen as good, but both can also have its evils. And that's why where Vegapunk why Vegapunk mentioned that, both sides are not necessarily good or evil. Like, you can't dictate what both ideologies are based on what they could actually, or the potential they could actually have. There's good in freedom, but there's also bad in freedom, where people will do whatever they want in a lawless, society, right? With law, with a governing body, with monarchy, right? You see good in that there is someone who can dictate what you can and can't do, such as making laws. Don't steal, don't do this, don't do that, to protect people. But at the same time, when you have a monarchy, there's a chance that that person will become so corrupted that they will do exactly what, is against what they should be representing, right? Such as the Celestial Dragons. And possibly, the people, the royal family of the Ancient Kingdoms that aligned themselves to go up against Joy Boy probably wanted that. But they didn't tell that to the people of the world. And thus they made it feel like Joy Boy was trying to essentially create a lawless environment, while they were trying to create a, an environment where there is law, where it prevents people from doing very, very messed up things, while in secret they were probably plotting doing those things just, on the inside. And I think that's where it's happening. Zunisha and the giant robot more than likely are apologizing to Joy Boy because they realized that they were fooled. They probably turned against Joy Boy because they believed what his ideology was going to lead down the path that they, that would create a, lawless environment, and they were tricked by those the other side. And thus, that's why Zunisha has, his curse. That's why the giant robot is apologizing to Joy Boy, because they didn't believe in him. And that was their downfall. And that essentially became Joy Boy's downfall, because slowly people probably were gaslighted into believing that that's what he wanted, when I'm sure Joy Boy probably didn't. Yes, he was considered the first pirate, but who did consider him as the first pirate? It had to be some sort of governing body, such as the world government, who labeled him as such. And when you labeled him as such and, told stories about, like, a lot of the stuff that pirates probably did or what he does, it made people fear him. The only people that didn't fear him are the ones who actually knew him, right? And it caused a huge conflict that eventually created this war, and eventually shaped the world of One Piece that we know now. I believe those are the ideologies that both sides were fighting. Both sides have a good side and a bad side. Regardless, freedom, I understand, is what something that Luffy fights for. He wants to liberate, people who are trapped under this rule, under this law that, enslaves them and stuff like that. But there are risks of total freedom. Because with total freedom, you still have people who will do things that may not be righteous. It'll be, I guess the word is viscerous. I think it's essentially freedom can have virtue, but it can also have vice. And there will be good and bad with freedom, with total freedom. But there's also good and bad with monarchy or like law. So I think those were the two ideologies they are clashing against. And I think part of the reason why I think that, Roger maybe laughed at Laugh Tale was probably because the story itself of the war probably was something that was ridiculous. It was probably something like, are you kidding me? This is why you guys were fighting for? Your ideologies are basically almost the same, and you fought each other for two ideologies that can coexist together. Or it could just be like actual Joe Boy's story of like what he wanted, the type of freedom he wanted, his adventures. It could also be his adventures. Joe Boy was the symbol of, freedom, of happiness, of, excitement, of going on adventures, similar to like what Luffy is doing, right? But I think the war created a conflict where one side was essentially gaslighting people into believing that the freedom that Joe Boy wanted was going to create a lawless area or a lawless planet where people can do a lot of messed up things because there's no one to govern or, you know, police the kind of brutality, the kind of evil stuff that total freedom can give, right? This is why I think a lot of people believe that total freedom is what we should have. The problem is that if you give everyone total freedom, there will be people who abuse that freedom. And yeah, so I think that was basically the two ideologies that were being fought against. You can see them as good, you can also see them as bad, which is why, you know, like I said, Vegapunk doesn't see them as such. You know, he doesn't determine one side being good, one side being bad. It's basically determined by you, the person who is going to be experiencing or reading about both sides. And essentially that's what I think is going on and what happened during the Void Century and why that conflict started. So let me know what you think. Whether you agree or disagree, I'm more than happy to hear any of your comments about what you believe the two ideologies were. I would love to talk to you about it. And just thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to see more One Piece videos. And thank you so much for your time. So thank you. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.